Some people feel trapped the moment they walk through their front door. This isn't about loving adventure or being social. This is about something deeper happening in the brain that makes home feel like the last place someone wants to be. And for millions of people, being at home triggers anxiety, restlessness, and even depression in ways most of us don't understand. Number 1. Experiential avoidance and the home environment. There's a concept in psychology called experiential avoidance. This is when someone goes out of their way to avoid certain thoughts, feelings, or physical sensations that make them uncomfortable. And sometimes, home becomes the place where all these uncomfortable feelings show up. Research published in neuropsychology journals shows that experiential avoidance happens when people use their surroundings to escape from unwanted internal experiences. The thing is, home is often quiet. There are fewer distractions, and when the noise of the outside world disappears, people are left alone with their thoughts. For some, that's peaceful, but for others, it's terrifying. Studies link experiential avoidance to several mental health conditions, including depression, anxiety disorders, conduct issues, and post-traumatic stress disorder. When someone associates their home with having to face uncomfortable emotions, their brain learns to see home as a threat rather than a safe space. The research shows that people who struggle with this will do almost anything to stay busy and away from home because being there means confronting what they're trying to avoid. This is different from just wanting to go out and have fun. This is about the brain creating a connection between home and emotional discomfort. Over time, just thinking about going home can trigger stress responses in the body. The heart rate increases, muscles tense up, and the person feels an urgent need to be anywhere else. What makes this worse is that avoidance actually strengthens the problem. Every time someone leaves home to escape their thoughts, their brain gets a reward signal. They feel temporary relief. But this teaches the brain that home equals danger and leaving equals safety. It's a cycle that keeps getting stronger. Number 2, trauma and negative associations with home spaces. For some people, hating being at home has nothing to do with the physical space itself. It has everything to do with what happened there. Trauma research shows that when someone experiences something painful or frightening in a specific location, their brain can create what's called a conditioned response. This means that being in that place, even years later, can bring back the feelings from the original traumatic event. The person might not even consciously remember why they feel bad at home, but their body remembers. People who grew up in homes with conflict, abuse, neglect, or instability often carry these associations into adulthood. Even if they've moved to a completely different house, the concept of home itself can trigger stress responses. Forum discussions and mental health communities are filled with stories from people who describe feeling their mood drop the moment they arrive home, even when nothing bad is currently happening there. One person described it like this: coming home after being away for 2 weeks sent them into the biggest spiral they'd ever experienced. The intrusive thoughts got louder. The coping tools that usually worked stopped working, all because they were back in the environment where their trauma originally occurred. The brain's threat detection system, centered in the amygdala, doesn't distinguish well between past and present. If home was dangerous before, the amygdala may keep treating it as dangerous now. This creates a constant state of alertness that's exhausting. People describe feeling like they can't relax, can't sleep properly, and can't find peace in the one place that's supposed to provide those things. What's particularly difficult is that many people who experience this don't have the option to leave. Financial constraints, family obligations, or being in school can trap someone in a home environment that their brain has learned to fear. This creates a painful contradiction where the place that should be a refuge becomes a prison. Number 3. Lack of autonomy and personal space. Humans have a deep psychological need for autonomy. This is the ability to make choices that align with personal values and to have control over one's environment. When home doesn't provide this, it can become a source of significant distress. Research in self-determination theory identifies autonomy as one of 3 basic psychological needs along with competence and relatedness. When this need isn't met, people experience decreased well-being and motivation. And home is often where autonomy gets challenged the most. Living with family members, roommates, or in cramped spaces means constantly negotiating boundaries. Someone might not be able to control the temperature, the noise level, when meals happen, or even when they can have privacy. Studies show that lack of privacy and personal space can make people feel invaded and uncomfortable in their own homes. This is especially true for people with certain personality types. Research on personality traits shows that some people have a much higher need for personal space and independence than others. For them, sharing a home feels like a constant compromise of their autonomy. They can't decorate how they want, can't follow their own schedule, and can't create the environment that helps them feel at peace. The impact goes beyond just feeling annoyed. When autonomy is repeatedly violated, people can develop what psychologists call learned helplessness. This is when someone starts to believe they have no control over their environment or circumstances. They stop trying to make changes because past attempts have failed. This can contribute to depression and anxiety. Interestingly, research has found that people who feel they lack control at home often compensate by seeking it elsewhere. They might work longer hours, spend more time in their car, or find third places like coffee shops or libraries where they can create their own bubble of control. Home becomes the place they avoid because it represents everything they can't control. Number 4, the restless personality and need for stimulation. Some people are wired differently when it comes to stimulation and novelty. Their brains crave change, new experiences, and constant movement in ways that make staying home feel almost physically painful. Personality psychology research identifies traits like high openness to experience and low tolerance for routine as factors that make people naturally restless. These individuals don't just prefer variety, they actually need it to feel mentally healthy. Being at home, especially in a quiet or predictable environment, can leave them feeling understimulated and agitated. There's also a strong connection to ADHD. Research shows that adults with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder commonly experience restlessness when required to stay still for long periods. They feel understimulated, impatient, and physically uncomfortable. For them, home can feel like a cage because there's not enough happening to keep their brain engaged. Studies on personality types reveal that certain people become restless very easily and hate feeling stagnant. They describe needing to experience new things and feeling trapped when stuck in one place. Without freedom to explore and seek out new experiences, they become extremely restless and annoyed. This isn't about being ungrateful or not appreciating what they have. It's about how their nervous system is wired. Their brains require more stimulation to maintain baseline functioning. What feels like peaceful relaxation to some people feels like suffocating boredom to others. The challenge is that society often misunderstands this. People with restless personalities get told they should learn to be content, to practice gratitude, or to just relax. But for them, relaxation requires movement and stimulation. Sitting at home doing nothing isn't restful, it's agitating. They actually rest better when they're active and engaged with the world. Research also shows that this restlessness often comes in waves. Someone might be fine at home for days or weeks, then suddenly experience an intense need to get out. These periods of restlessness can feel overwhelming and make them want to escape immediately, even if just for a walk or to sit in a coffee shop. Number 5, depression and the home as a trigger. The relationship between depression and home environments is complex and often misunderstood. For many people struggling with depression, being at home actually makes their symptoms worse. Clinical research shows that certain environments can trigger or worsen depressive episodes. When someone is depressed, they often lose the part of themselves that found joy in normal activities. Home, which should be comforting, instead becomes a reminder of everything they're not doing and everything they're struggling with. Studies on stay-at-home parents revealed that some people experience severe depression, specifically from being at home. The research found that women who force themselves into stay-at-home roles when they actively hate doing so face serious risk for depression. It's not about not loving their families. It's about the environment itself being fundamentally wrong for their mental health needs. Being at home can also amplify isolation. When someone is depressed, they often withdraw from social connections. If they're spending most of their time at home, this withdrawal becomes more complete. They lose the adult conversations, the sense of purpose from work, and the external validation that comes from engaging with the world. This creates a downward spiral where being at home increases depression, which increases the desire to stay home, which increases depression even more. The physical environment plays a role too. Research indicates that cluttered, disorganized homes can generate stress and anxiety. When someone is already struggling with depression, coming home to mess and chaos makes everything feel more overwhelming. The home becomes a visual representation of their internal state of disorder. Interestingly, some people report that their mood drops dramatically the moment they arrive home, even if they were feeling okay just minutes before. This suggests the home environment has become a conditioned trigger for depressive feelings. The association is so strong that simply being in the space activates the depression. Mental health professionals note that for some people, particularly those who thrived in work environments, losing that structure and purpose when staying home can be devastating. They miss the challenges, the problem solving, and the sense of accomplishment that came from their careers. Home doesn't provide these same mental rewards. Number 6. Anxiety disorders and home-based avoidance patterns. Anxiety disorders often involve complex avoidance patterns, and sometimes home becomes part of what someone needs to avoid to manage their anxiety. Research on generalized anxiety disorder shows it's characterized by persistent, excessive worry that's hard to control. People with this condition often experience restlessness, difficulty concentrating, and sleep disturbances. For some, being at home intensifies these symptoms because the quiet gives their anxious thoughts more space to spiral. The anxiety cycle works like this. Someone experiences anxiety symptoms at home. They avoid home to get relief from those symptoms. They feel temporarily better. And this reinforces the belief that home is the source of their anxiety. Over time, the avoidance becomes stronger and stronger. Studies show that avoidance is considered a core maladaptive behavioral response in anxiety disorders. While avoiding things that cause anxiety provides short-term relief, it actually maintains and strengthens the anxiety long-term. The person never learns that they can tolerate being at home with their anxious feelings, so the fear keeps growing. What makes this particularly difficult is that home is supposed to be the safe place. When someone with anxiety finds that home triggers their symptoms rather than soothes them, they lose their primary refuge. They're left feeling like they have nowhere to truly relax. Research on agoraphobia, though it typically involves fear of being outside the home, shows how powerful location-based anxiety can become. The brain can learn to associate any environment with panic or fear. When this happens with home, people may feel safer literally anywhere else, even though that seems backwards. Cognitive behavioral therapy research demonstrates that exposure is key to overcoming avoidance. But this is challenging when the avoided place is home. People can't just gradually expose themselves to home. They have to live there. This makes treatment more complicated and requires specialized approaches. Number 7. Social needs and the isolation of home. Humans evolved as social creatures. Research consistently shows that social connection is fundamental to mental health and well-being. For people with strong social needs, being at home can feel like deprivation. Studies indicate that humans generally need to feel part of a stable social group to experience happiness and life satisfaction. When someone's home life doesn't provide adequate social interaction, they may feel compelled to seek it elsewhere constantly. This isn't about being needy or unable to be alone. It's about a genuine psychological requirement for connection. The research on social anxiety presents an interesting contrast. While some people avoid social situations, others avoid being alone at home specifically because isolation triggers their anxiety. They need the presence of others to feel emotionally regulated and secure. Personality research shows that extroverted individuals gain energy from social interaction and can feel drained by too much alone time. For them, an empty home isn't peaceful, it's depleting. They literally need social contact to maintain their mental energy levels. This becomes particularly challenging in living situations where someone is alone at home frequently. Young adults living independently, people whose partners work different schedules, or those who work from home can find themselves isolated in ways that negatively impact their mental health. Forum discussions reveal that many people describe feeling desperate to leave empty homes just to be around other humans. The psychological impact of loneliness is well documented. Research shows it can lead to depression, anxiety, and even physical health problems. When home equals loneliness, avoiding home becomes a strategy for protecting mental health, even if it's not a sustainable one. What's interesting is that this isn't necessarily about having deep conversations or close relationships. Sometimes people just need ambient social presence, being around others even without direct interaction. This is why coffee shops, libraries, and public spaces can feel better than home for socially oriented people. Number 8. Work-life boundary collapse. The rise of remote work has created a new psychological challenge: the collapse of boundaries between work and personal life. Research shows that when work happens at home, people can feel like they never truly leave the office. This lack of separation between professional and personal spaces becomes overwhelming. The home stops being a place of rest and becomes an extension of work stress. Studies on work-from-home arrangements reveal that many people struggle with the inability to disconnect. Even when they're not actively working, being in the same space where they work keeps their brain in work mode. They can't relax because their environment constantly reminds them of deadlines, emails, and professional responsibilities. This creates a situation where people actively avoid spending time at home because it's become associated with work pressure rather than relaxation. They might work from coffee shops, libraries, or co-working spaces just to create some separation, even though they technically can work from home. The psychological principle at play is called context-dependent memory and emotion. Our brains create strong associations between environments and the activities or emotions we experience in them. When home becomes the work context, it loses its ability to trigger relaxation and recovery. Research on burnout shows that the inability to separate work and personal life is a major contributing factor. People need physical and mental boundaries to recover from work stress. When those boundaries disappear because work and home are the same place, burnout becomes almost inevitable. Number 9. Childhood conditioning and home as an unsafe concept. The psychology of attachment and early childhood experiences has profound effects on how people relate to home as adults. Developmental psychology research shows that children who grow up in unstable, chaotic, or emotionally unsafe homes develop different neural patterns around the concept of home itself. Their brains may never learn to associate home with safety and comfort. Instead, home becomes linked with unpredictability, stress, or emotional pain. This conditioning can persist long after the person leaves their childhood home. Studies show that adult children of parents with mental health issues, addiction, or abusive patterns often struggle with feeling comfortable in any home environment. The word home itself can trigger stress responses. Attachment theory explains that children need safe, consistent environments to develop secure attachment patterns. When home doesn't provide this, children may develop avoidant attachment styles. As adults, they continue avoiding home because it unconsciously represents the insecurity they experienced as children. What makes this particularly challenging is that many people don't consciously connect their discomfort at home with childhood experiences. They just know they feel better elsewhere. The connection between past and present remains hidden, making it hard to address the root cause. Research on complex PTSD shows that ongoing childhood trauma creates lasting changes in how the brain processes safety and threat. For people with this background, home may never feel fully safe, no matter how different their current living situation is from their childhood. The nervous system remains on alert. Here's what all this research tells us. Hating being at home isn't a character flaw. It's often a sign that something in the home environment doesn't match what that person's brain needs to feel safe, stimulated, or connected. Understanding the psychology behind why people hate being at home helps remove the shame and guilt many people feel about this. Whether it's trauma, personality traits, mental health conditions, or unmet psychological needs, there are real research-backed reasons why home can feel wrong for some people. The solution isn't always about learning to love being at home. Sometimes it's about acknowledging the mismatch between a person's psychological needs and their environment, and finding ways to address that, whether through therapy, environmental changes, creating better boundaries, or accepting that some people genuinely function better with more variety and external engagement in their lives. What matters most is recognizing that these feelings are valid psychological experiences, not failures of gratitude or character. If this resonated with you, then subscribe to the channel.